The Army is really, just to use your own words, it's the tip of the spear in terms of this battle against coronavirus. You're really on the front lines in terms of response efforts right now. Outline what that means, especially when it comes to hospitals, vaccines, and how quickly you can move.
We have three lines of operation, Morgan: prevention, detection, and treatment. And on the prevention front, to the point you illustrated, was we're working on diagnostic test capabilities as well as the vaccines. We're on 5 different tracks, 24 different candidates that we're working with the private sector and other government agencies at various levels of maturity. We have 2 field hospitals deployed up there in New York City from the 101st Airborne Division, and 2 field hospitals that are deployed from Fort Carson that are up in Seattle, Washington. So whether it's vaccines, testing, or the first responders, we have thousands of U.S. personnel involved with us, and they're working 24 hours a day until we find this vaccine and win.
I think what's so striking about this is that for the military, it's not just about protecting the country from this threat, but the force itself, and that's not something that can be easily done with the most advanced weapon systems and networks the way you would see in a traditional conflict or war. So how is this changing the Army's mission, and how are you keeping those personnel safe?
Well, Homeland Defense strikes to the heart of the Army's mission. Our National Guardsmen, we have, I think, over 10,000 deployed at present across multiple states, thousands more that are preparing at various stages to respond to this crisis. Our National Guardsmen come from our communities, and they have been involved with first responding to distributing and logistics. So this is a core mission for the U.S. Army, and we've been prepared and we are responding accordingly.
Mr. Secretary, that is great to hear. And maybe you can give a sense of the degree to which you do prepare, you do train for a scenario like this. We're used to seeing images and thinking about preparing for actual combat on a battlefield, but this is something different, isn't it?
Very much so. One thing in particular is there are many similarities like that of a hurricane, where we respond in the various communities with providing medical support, logistical support, and take a lot of that burden off of the state and localities. So these are missions, very similar missions that we perform here in the United States, but as well as all over the world.
Mr. Secretary, we're seeing pain in the aerospace sector right now. Boeing this morning, the latest to announce voluntary layoffs. Whether it is that company specifically or one of its many commercial suppliers that have announced contingency plans in recent days, we're talking about the same contractors that are crucial not only to commercial aviation, but also to the defense industrial base. How concerned are you about some of the issues that we're seeing play out right now? And how is the Army working to mitigate the financial strain?
Obviously, very concerned. We're in constant communication with our largest vendors. You had mentioned Boeing, who makes several great products for us that have served us well for decades in various combat operations. We're in constant communication. I think that there's opportunity with another potential funding bill that Congress is in the midst of discussions. We've looked at ways, could we put some things on order faster to, if necessary, help with the cash flows of these companies, and then as well as other authorities to use under a public health emergency. But these are mission essential personnel, so that if you put the protocols in place, they can still bend metal and make products during the midst of this crisis.
Mr. Secretary, just a quick question on the Navy, actually, and this the sailors in Guam who are being quarantined off of the USS Theodore Roosevelt. How much are protocols being shared between branches, given that it's affecting so many of them?
Secretary Esper convenes updates with all of the senior leaders of the services, the Office of Secretary of Defense, as well as combatant commanders. We had a 2-hour meeting this morning. We did talk about the Teddy Roosevelt and others, and we are looking at precisely to your point about protocols to put in place with additional testing capabilities, so we create these safety bubbles and be able to move personnel in larger groups to get them from point A to B safely, and as well as looking at conceptually how will we train under these strained conditions in the months ahead of us.
Yeah, and along those lines, Secretary McCarthy, I mean, we do have foes that are looking to take advantage of the country's focus on coronavirus efforts right now. Yesterday alone, President Trump warning Iran against a potential sneak attack on American troops, also deploying more military forces to the Caribbean to combat drug cartels and some of the, I guess, increased activity that's happening there. How is the Army and the Pentagon more broadly balancing response efforts, keeping personnel safe, and then, of course, maintaining operational readiness in the midst of some of these threats?
Over half of our brigade combat teams are at the highest levels of readiness. So we are ready to fight tonight to anybody that challenges the United States of America. We have over 191,000 people deployed worldwide in over 140 countries. We've moved testing capability forward to Afghanistan and Iraq in particular, where units are in combat operations. So we have made adjustments to support units that are in contact, as well as putting certain units in our immediate response force to a higher alert posture, to put a bubble around them to ensure they can be ready to go, just like you saw the 82nd Airborne on New Year's Eve deploy and have boots on the ground within 18 hours. So times are challenging for us, but we are ready to take on any fight anywhere on this earth.
Secretary, to the extent that you can you give us an update on the Army's supply of tests, of protective equipment, of ventilators, which are surely to be essential equipment for this fight, even as it comes to the troops themselves?
So the Army baseline, the total protective equipment that would be required to support our force, as well as be in a position to surge if necessary for operations anywhere in the world, the operational plans that we have in place for contingency operations. What the delta associated with that, we've looked at a defense-wide pool to be able to support the domestic fight we have on hand. Secretary Esper released over 5 million sets of PPE about a week or so ago to domestic distribution. We're looking at potentially more. So we're going to continue to look and see ways we can support this domestic effort.
And finally, Mr. Secretary, I just want to get your take on the contracting process that's happening right now and what that means not only for the defense primes, but for the small and medium businesses that comprise so much of the supplier base in general. You've continued to dole out some of those awards. Future vertical lift, for example, we've seen some down selects in recent weeks. Is that going to continue to be the case, that you're going to continue to hand out these contracts and help these companies through this difficult process?
Absolutely, Morgan. It's something that over the long term is going to be critical for us to find a way to support those second and third tier suppliers that you referenced. But it's the distribution of the funds that we had appropriated to us, work with the states to find ways to get workers safely from their homes to work, and continue to develop these capabilities and push them down those assembly lines, because we need to continue to put new capabilities in our formation. The world is very complex and dangerous right now.